I'm Iwan Fox, and welcome to the latest 4BR podcast interview where I talk to leading musicians and personalities with a link to the brass banding world. Today I'm catching up with David Bremner, section principal trombone of the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, soloist, educator, teacher, and of course the inspirational conductor behind the incredible success of Wellington Brass, who won the New Zealand National Championship title for the 11th time in the last 12 contesting years in Christchurch in July. Recently, though, he's been in Tonga leading their National Youth Brass Band course. An amazing setup that is taking place there. So it's a great time to catch up with you, David. Welcome back to 4Barsrest. The last time we spoke was at the RNCM International Brass Band Festival in Manchester. So you've been up to a lot in that short period of time since we last spoke.
Yeah, it seems crazy to think that was this year over in Manchester. It seems like it's been a really busy year, but yeah, lots of fun things that I've been able to do, and yeah, I still reminisce of that festival in Manchester was just a massive highlight. It was so much fun.
So tell us what's been happening then with this remarkable setup that we have in Tonga. Now, I understand it takes the connection with the brass banding has been going on for a little while, and there's been a lot of support that's been given by Australasian banding to the setup of brass banding and trying to really revitalize it after they had, I think it was a natural disaster out in the area a couple of years ago. So, where was the starting point with this band?
Yeah, well, I guess my connection with Tonga came about from um, some years ago. I was in Wellington. I heard a Tongan band playing down on Lambton Quay, down in the middle of the city, and they were amazing. They did this fantastic concert and dancing and singing, and it was just incredible. And then I heard after that, literally on Christmas Day, the bus with all the kids on board had a bus accident just out of Gisborne, up north, and crashed, and some of the kids had died. A couple of the teachers passed away. It was very, very sad, and I started to ask around, what I could do to help, and that's what started my connection going over to Tonga, teaching, performing, working with the bands, the school bands, and slowly over a period of time, the seed of this national youth band was something that we kept talking about. It was an idea that we had about creating an opportunity for these kids to come together and create music at the highest level. And um, and then finally this year it came to fruition. We managed to get everything sorted, and it's just been a real joy to put together. And the week that we had in Tonga was absolutely amazing.
So, what has been some of the support that has been coming from the the banding community over there? Then I understand was there provision of instruments that was given as well, with support from people like Besson, etc.
Yeah, Besson has been hugely supportive of everything in Tonga. They've donated instruments, they've supported musicians going over there and working with the school bands. Um, They've been absolutely brilliant. And then we've also collected secondhand instruments from around New Zealand that we've taken over on various trips and donated many, many instruments to the school. So it's been a real joy to work with them and to see the joy that music brings them, and then also to contribute in some way with instruments and being involved in concerts has been unbelievable. And then this youth band has just been the icing on the cake.
Music is very much part and parcel of the culture in Tonga. But where does brass banding come in? You know, has it been there? Is it a new phenomenon, or is it going back a number of years? Do you know something about that history?
I've heard two stories. One was it was involved through the church, and another story was that it came from a previous king who had loved the sound of the English brass band and brought a whole set of instruments back to Tonga for his school. Either way, it caught on, and all the schools pretty much have a brass band now, and they're all involved in the local, banding scene there, and it's really quite a remarkable thing to see so many kids learning brass instruments. Unbelievable.
So the basis of it is in education then. So they have a high, it's like a high school setup that they have there, is it? And then individual schools, and then do they go on? Is it a music college? What's the actual educational setup like?
Well, the tough thing is they don't have community bands like we do in the UK or in New Zealand. So there's not a lot of bands for them to go to after they leave school. But through school, there is a heap of opportunities for them to get an instrument, to learn to play as a band, um, and then they can, play at their church. So there is a wealth of opportunity there. But what there wasn't was this idea that you could take the best of these kids and put them in one room and see what they're capable of achieving. And that was something that we thought would be an amazing opportunity for them, and something we worked very hard to give them that opportunity. So it was amazing when it finally did come together.
So the National Youth Band of Tonga then is made up of players from a number of these schools. One of those schools, I think, very successful at the New Zealand National Championships. I think it was in the B grade. I think it was, wasn't it? A couple of years ago,
Yes.
actually won the title. So, and how old are the players themselves? So, who are you actually targeting to be in this National Youth Band?
Yeah, so I think it was under 24 was the age, and majority of them were from schools, but there were also kids from the Tepo Tertiary Institute, TTI, which is like a polytech training school for many trades and teaching and music. And so a lot of them are learning their skills through TTI, and we actually combined with them in the concert. They brought their choir along, which was very special. So.
I saw some highlights of it that occurred on you recorded and put on Facebook. It's a real joyful sound that they make. Tell us a little bit about the course itself. Then, where was it actually based? Was it a week long course culminating in local concerts? What was the setup?
Yeah, so we rehearsed out at the Army barracks in a new facility that was built in the Army out by the airport. Um, we had many helpers that were also fine musicians like Chris Thompson, Andrew Leach, my dad, Trevor was there for a couple of days. So they took sectionals, and we had 3 days of pretty intense rehearsal in some pretty hot conditions. It's actually middle of winter for them there, but it's still hot for me coming from Wellington. And we rehearsed 3 days, and we talked a lot. We talked about concepts. We talked about the different ways that music is important to us, and we just had an amazing 3 days putting this program together. And then on the Friday, we met at the venue in town and did a concert Friday night, which was just super special. And yeah, it was just a real thrill that I think after all the hard work and everything we put in to make the course happen, that it went so smoothly. And it was so much fun, but also just to see the joy on the kids' faces during the concert. Um, and they were very nervous with all their families there and lots of dignitaries and stuff. But it was a real experience. And one of the great things was I'd actually sourced some money for a scholarship for one member of the band to come out to New Zealand over the next year and have lessons, play in Wellington Brass for a concert and play a solo, um, and really just have an experience for sort of 5, 6 days in Wellington. And when we announced the winner of that, just the shock on this young boy's face was something I'll never forget. And then I watched the video back when I got back to New Zealand, and you can see in the video, you can sort of see him. I don't know if he was or not, but it looked like he was sort of wiping a tear away,
Ah,
like he was. It really did mean a lot to him, so that was very special as well.
and so for the future then with this, where do you see Tongan banding, the community of banding in the country developing? And as you say, you've got players, there will be, hopefully, players will be coming from Tonga to come into New Zealand, enjoying, even if you're guesting with bands, etc., to play at the national championships or coming in to play in concerts, etc. So it's the start, you think, of something which can really grow.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it, when you start to talk about like, goals and where they want to get to. And I often think first and foremost, it would be great just that every kid that was there could have music in their life for the rest of their life in some way. And that was something we talked a lot about, was finding your avenue. Like there's a boy, a very fine cornet player, and he was talking about studying architecture. And I talked to him about how he could still have music even through that career as an important part of his life. And they will, because it's
Mhm.
ingrained in the Tongan culture, it's ingrained in who they are as people. Um, but we had a young boy here in Wellington for a few years, Stephen Mozziardi, who's a Tongan, and he studied at the Victoria University here. He's now NM in Melbourne at the National Academy of Music there. He actually came to Tonga with the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra brass section when we did a tour there, and to see the look on the kids' faces when they see Stephen, who's Tongan, playing with the NZSO, and they see this is actually um, this is doable. This is something I could do. And that was really special. And I think in my head, I had with this youth band, it would just be great if we could, you know, give everyone the opportunity to be the next Stephen Mozziarti, to
Mhm.
be the next kid that has that the ability and the opportunity, and that there's nothing holding them back. So I just wanted them to make sure that they knew that that's the situation, and they're also positive and yeah, and so I think the scholarship is a really good step forward in that direction as well, because that one boy will come over and have this experience, and then take that energy, that experience back to Tonga and be able to share that with everyone in their school, and so that's really great.
Well, for the future, then, this the Tongan National Youth Band? Is it going to be an annual course or biannual? What's the outlook for it?
Yeah, we want it to happen every year, which would be the best scenario. So hopefully that will be the case, and we're trying to put things in. Excuse me, Ewan.
Yeah, yeah.
Put things into place so we can keep that happening every year. So.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask you a long question now, so you can have a drink of water when we're doing that. When I'm going to go back now, great work that you're actually doing there in Tonga, and we're going to really keep a close eye on it, and hopefully find out a bit more directly from there about how the brass banding culture is going to be developing, both there in the country and, as you say, by successfully exporting players to New Zealand. There's a touch of the New Zealand rugby about that, I think, exporting players for somebody to do.
Yeah, educator in the Tonga.
Talking about the domestic front, when we last spoke at the RNCM International Brass Band Festival, you were talking about, of course, Wellington Brass doing the preparation to defend their title at the New Zealand National Championships. That was done absolutely successfully. You've now won it 11 times in the last 12 competing years. Can you give us an idea about what is now driving that band on to success? Because they are now the dominant force in Southern Hemisphere banding. So is it that continual pursuit of excellence which is driving you on?
Yeah, we work very hard towards being as good a band as we can. We work very hard towards um, developing all our skills, and being part of our community. Um, but also, we love to have opportunities overseas. Now, I've given you mic off as
I
well,
know, we
Ewan.
both having it now.
I jumped across the airwaves. Um, and we've been talking for a long time about having opportunities to get overseas and perform, and we're very looking forward to going to Kerkrada in 2026 to the World Championships, and we're furiously fundraising for that at the moment. Um, but yeah, we the contest is an important thing for banding in New Zealand, and we take it very seriously. We work towards it, but it's one aspect of our year. Next month, we do a concert with a local choir in the Michael Fowler Centre. We do Kamina Barana. Sorry, Ewan.
Don't die on me. Don't die on me before the interview finishes.
It'd be good. It'd be good for ratings, though. Um, but we do Kamina Barana next month with one of the local choirs here, and so we're a busy band throughout the year, as well as trying to get more opportunities outside of New Zealand as well.
Are you finding the same thing that I know there's been a real revitalisation within the New Zealand banding movement? In Christchurch, I think there was a record number of bands that were actually taking part. It seems to be that there's an influx of youthful talent now in any number of bands that are taking place there. Is that being reflected as well? Because is there being change in education policy? What is it that's been the catalyst for this revitalisation of New Zealand banding, not just for your band, but for many others in both the North and Southern Islands?
Yeah, I think that bands across New Zealand have made a real important decision that they're not going to have a future if they don't have a youth band. And for many years, bands just thought that they would continue to get players coming in to their city and joining, and now they're realizing that they actually have to produce these players. So there's been a real shift, I think, with a lot of bands. A lot of districts across the country have started to have youth bands. And I think the association has made it a real important aspect of banding. And so that's been hugely beneficial for seeing bands being able to continue to contest, to have youth bands come through, lower grade bands. You've got some situations in New Zealand where there's bands that have multiple bands in different grades. And likewise in Australia, I saw Willoughby Brass now has two A grade bands. So that's a hugely positive thing for banding in this part of the world, because if we don't produce the next players, then we're going to go nowhere. So the fact that numbers in the junior solos at contests are up, the numbers of bands competing are up, is really good signs, I think, for banding down this part of the world.
I think that's also reflected because New Zealand has had a long history, of course, of national bands. I talk about the national band that came over to the British Open in 1953, of course. But you got you got a national secondary school band and a national youth brass band of New Zealand. Both of those are really the driving forces of providing that next generation of players.
Yeah, so we have a secondary schools band that has two bands, the National Secondary Schools Band and the Development Band, and they meet once a year in the school holidays. I think it's August, and they put that camp together. They rehearse music, they have tuition, sectionals, and put on concerts. The National Youth Band is a camp that runs in January, and it's a very successful course. And it's very popular with the youth. I think that might be under 23, is that band. And then, of course, the National Band, which has been active since 1953. Well, actually, there was a band, the Hini Moa Band, which I think was from, I want to say 1908, but it was around that time. That was a band, the first band, sort of representative band from New Zealand that travelled away from New Zealand. It wasn't an official national band of New Zealand, but a lot of people regard that as sort of the beginning of that idea of a national band. But the 1953 band, of course, that went away and won the British Open, and then subsequent national bands since then that have been very, very successful. So I think the fact that we've got these secondary schools band, youth bands, and then they're aspiring to be in that national band, I think is very important. And it's great to see so many kids coming through now. And I think it really is something that the association, the executive committee that run our association have made as a very important aspect of banding. And it's great to see that they've done that, because I think there's been a big shift. So
It's interesting you talk about the outward look of New Zealand banding, talking about yourselves going to Kirkrada in 2026, the national band of New Zealand. I actually saw them in performance, I think, in Kirkrada. it's a long time ago now, about 8 years ago, I think, under the
Mm,
conductor Nigel Weeks.
yes.
So it's great that you got that. Do you think that's an important aspect of it? Because geographically, as people say, New Zealand and Australia is a banding culture which is so separate away from what's happening in the Northern Hemisphere. It would be a really good thing if there was much more regular contact between those bands and the bands in the Northern Hemisphere at competitions such as Kirkrada, such as the British Open, which has occurred in the past, to really find out where New Zealand and Australian banding really stands.
Yeah, well, it's tricky, isn't it, with the national band because they're a representative band. It's very hard for them to get a look in nowadays to some of these competitions, except for Ke Karatas. They've had a long relationship with Ke Karata, but with competitions like British Open, because they're a representative band, not a community band, it's a bit trickier. But certainly in Wellington Brass's history, the fact that we went to the British Open in 2016, I think,
Yeah.
and we had just an incredible experience. And we came back and we sort of thought we want to do that again and again and again. It was just this to sort of be on stage. I think maybe we played one or two after Black Dyke and one or two before Corey, which might have been the kiss of death because when you're surrounded by those top bands, but it really was a joy for us to have that experience. Then it got much trickier to get the pathways into some of those competitions. Um, so I would love to see it open up so that there was an opportunity for bands down in this part of the world because some of these bands are very, very good, and some of the bands are, I think, would also develop and have the opportunity to play alongside those bands at those competitions would just be immense for them. So, yeah, it would be great to see that happen more and more, especially the top bands from Australia and New Zealand are never going to be in the Europeans, but it would be great to see them including in other competitions for
Well,
sure.
well, if we, I think it's the Eurovision Song Contest actually includes an Australian entry
That is
nowadays. I
true.
I don't know why, but there we go. Perhaps
I don't either.
that may be the way forward for that there.
Is that a
And
big
as you say,
thing? It's a big thing over there, isn't it? The Eurovisions,
it is for certain people. I have to say, it didn't tickle
right?
my butt, but there we go. But talking again about that future, then for you, looking back to the past, National Band of New Zealand, you sat there in your chair, you're surrounded. I have to say, wonderful to see a man who has got a stack hi-fi system in his house. I think you're a man after my own heart when it comes to
Yeah.
technology. You've got a lot of LPs up next to you there as well. And you said one of those is an LP with that pioneering British Open winning band, the National Band of New Zealand from 1953. So you're very aware of the history of New Zealand band and
Oh
how
yeah.
important it is linked to those competitions such as the British Open.
Yeah. Well, my dad was in national bands when I was a kid, and um, it was a very important part of his life. He was in the '62 and '65 national band tours that went to Europe, UK, and then he was in the '85 national band under Ken Smith Jr. That also won in Ke Karata, and um, I went to the first concert. Sorry, I went to the. Mum took us to the concert when they returned home from winning the World Championships, and they played in Auckland. And we drove up to Auckland, and we went to this concert. And the first piece they played in the concert was Dvorak Carnival Overture. So the first time I really ever heard a national band, bum, bum, bada, 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 bum, bada, bum, bada, dee, and I just was mesmerized. There were two things that I remember from that concert most importantly. One was um, that first hearing Dvorak Carnival Overture. The second was the trombone soloist played, I think, sequence, and I turned to my mum and I said, we'd been having a discussion for a while about what instrument I might end up on, and I turned around and said, "Well, it's definitely not the trombone," and it didn't work out that way. But
Great piece, that Gareth Wood piece. Is that Gareth
yeah,
Dancy?
yeah, I
Goes
just
Gareth Wood piece, isn't it? Yeah, that's a
it
great.
was Gareth. I don't hear it anymore, but I just remember thinking, oh, maybe the trombone's not for me. I don't think it's not my thing. But when I got the national band to conduct the national band 4 or 5 years ago, the first piece in the first rehearsal that I conducted was Dvorak Carnival Overture, and that was just a real thrill. And for me, it was just a throwback to that special memory of hearing the '85 National Band and my dad play, and then standing up as a conductor and conducting that band. So that was a really special link for me. But it is important, I think, that we understand um, what has happened before in the history. And I remember the great Kevin Jarrett,
Mm.
who was the conductor of National Band, was principal cornet of many national bands. And he always used to say that the greatest honor um, was to play in a national band or to be involved in a national band here, because it was music making at the very, very highest level, and for all the right reasons. And I couldn't disagree with him at all.
Well, I think you've actually shown that now over the years, both with the way in which you were developed as a player, as a performer. The people who were lucky enough, I have to say, to hear you perform as a soloist at the RNCM International Brass Band Festival in January was something indeed. And of course, you conducted Brighouse and Rastrick Band at that event. And then we hope to be able to both hear you and see you conducting both with Wellington and hopefully with the Tonga National Youth Brass Band again in the future. It seems to be a very exciting time, not only for yourself, but only for Wellington Band, but for New Zealand and Tongan banding as well. So brass banding in the Southern Hemisphere has a rosy future, you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positivity in banning across Australasia and the Pacific. I think um, the contests have got large numbers of bands turning out. Um, there's a lot of optimism, and I think it's great. And I think also, like this year we had two Australian bands come over to the New Zealand Nationals in Christchurch, two very good bands, and I think that really lifted the contest. And I think hopefully going forward that will happen more and more. But you know what it's like with finances, and getting a
Mm-hmm.
band across the Tasman is expensive. So it's a huge undertaking for these bands to make their way across either way, and likewise to come over to Europe is very, very expensive. So I would like to think that bands, as they develop and um, as the level keeps growing, that there'll be more opportunities for bands to do that, which would be really special.
Well, David, many thanks for joining us, especially with that cough. You want to get that
Oh,
sorted out now, my
sorry.
boy. That don't worry about that. Mind you, you give it to me, as you say, from 13,000 miles away. You managed to come away. It's wonderful to catch up with you again. Congratulations on that work that you've been doing in Tonga. I think that's an absolute remarkable thing that is happening there in the communities, and we look forward to listening much more from what's happening in Tonga in the future. David, many thanks indeed, and we look forward to catching up with you again. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ewan.